I think it's even sadder because it's 400 yards from where they went in.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're looking at the most upsetting moments in Who Do You Think You Are's long history.
But it is pretty overshadowed with tragedy, really.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Number 10. Unmarked Grave.
It is not until 1923 that the last landowners, like the Palmers, are forced to sell their Irish estates.
While exploring her lineage, beloved actress Julie Walters went to Ireland and learned about how her ancestors there lived and worked on land owned by distant English aristocrats, as many Irish people did. But eventually, laws were passed that let people buy the land they worked, one step nearer to Irish freedom.
So he hadn't bought it when he died?
No.
Oh, he still didn't get his land after all that.
After learning so much about the difficulties tenant farmers faced, including bad harvests leaving them starving, Walters was given the devastating news that her ancestor had died before the laws were passed.
There's an awful lot of tenant farmers buried here, but they wouldn't have any money to erect a headstone. So his grave is unmarked.
Oh.
This meant that Anthony Clark, after his colourful life and campaigns for land reform, never got the chance to own the land. Walters ended by visiting Clark's unmarked grave.
One of the great sadnesses of this story is that Anthony Clark died without being able to buy his land.
Number 9. World War I. In his episode, Daniel Radcliffe was given a treasure trove of love letters to his great-great-uncle Ernie from Ernie's sweetheart Jeannie, written to Ernie while he was away fighting in the First World War.
No one can say to you, Ernie, that you were going with a flirt, for I love you, Ernie, with all my heart, and will till death do us part.
Ernie was one of 4 brothers on this side of Radcliffe's family, and he wanted to know what happened to all of them, since it was all shrouded in mystery. But unfortunately, as you may have already suspected, Ernie never made it home from the war, while his other brothers did.
Yeah. There's Ernie. Ernest McDowell.
It was devastating to read Ernie's last letters home, and the letter sent to Ernie's mother by a soldier who was with him when he died from a stray artillery shell.
We were just after arriving in the trenches, and your boy and 2 more chaps from Belfast was going into a dugout to take off their packs when a shell landed.
Number 8. Held by the Nazis.
This was based on measuring the nose, the distance between the eyes, the head shape, things like that. Completely unscientific, but the Nazis believed in that.
Sue Perkins headed to Eastern Europe to find out what had happened to her Lithuanian ancestors. She found out that they were left in perilous circumstances after the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact in 1939, which parceled out huge swathes of Europe, including Lithuania, to each state. Parts of Lithuania became Nazi Germany, and her family, ethnic Germans from Lithuania, tried to return, only to find themselves not racially pure enough for the Nazis' resettlement project.
Albert and his family were never resettled, and spent over a year in a Nazi holding camp.
They horrifically ended up trapped in Nazi custody until the Soviets, now at war with the Nazis, took control of the territory and put Perkins' ancestors into a forced labour program.
My great-grandmother's family were asked as German Lithuanians to go back to the motherland, and they're then subject to being graded and analysed.
Number 7. Orphaned. Actress Anna Maxwell Martin took the middle part of her stage name, Maxwell, from her grandfather and wanted to learn more about him.
Dear sir, I'm writing to you on behalf of Maxwell Youngson, so Grandad.
Yes, your Grandad, huh?
I had a letter from his elder sister, at present in Australia.
Maxwell and all of his siblings were raised in an orphanage, and one of his older siblings wanted desperately to take him out and bring him to live with her. The other older siblings also tried to bring the younger ones out of the orphanage, to the point that they told the orphanage they would pay them back for all the money spent on the children when under their roof for many years.
Would you kindly reply and let me know if I can have him?
Isn't that very robust?
Despite all this, the orphanage just didn't want to let them go, because the siblings' father was seen to be a bad influence.
It's just because it's so little and somebody's saying, I'll have him, I don't need anything, and they're obviously still saying...
And that's his older sister, who he never met.
Number 6. imprisoned overseas.
I just can't comprehend what he'd have felt like. How his head must have been.
Line of Duty star Vicky McClure traced her great-grandfather's footsteps to Taiwan, where she made some harrowing discoveries. Her grandfather was taken to Taiwan as a prisoner of war during World War II, and in one distressing incident was made, with his fellow prisoners, to walk to a new site.
As they were walking to the new prison camp, there were people dying at the time because the conditions were so difficult. And some locals would come out and actually observe them on the march.
This march was lethal for many, and McClure was visibly upset while visiting the places her grandfather marched through. Being imprisoned anywhere is traumatic, let alone sent to a brutal POW camp in a different country during wartime.
All over the shop, and then I'm learning information that is just horrific, and it's my great-granddad, it's my mum's granddad.
Number 5. The arson accusation.
Shortly before 4 o'clock this morning, a fire broke out on the premises of Mr. Doubleday, Woodman Inn, Sheffield Moor.
TV and theatre royalty Sheridan Smith went to Sheffield and found out that she had many banjo players in her family history, but Benjamin Doubleday was the most notable.
There's scarcely any furniture in any of the rooms. Doubleday was the only person on the premises. He was leaving the house this week, having removed most of his belongings.
However, drama soon unfolded when she found out that he retired from music to become a pub landlord, but that 2 pubs of his suspiciously burned down.
God, I did not see any of this coming.
Is this quite a shock then?
Real shock.
He was suspected of arson, and Sheridan broke down in tears learning about all that he went through, especially finding out that his wife had left him and taken the children and all the furniture. His name was cleared, but he still lost his family and went to prison.
Prisoner was found not guilty and discharged.
Yeah.
Number 4. Young death.
She was a country girl. She came in from either Banff or Turf. What would have the contrast been like?
For a girl like her, coming into a mill would be a bit of a shock.
Eurythmics Annie Lennox went back to Scotland to learn about the factory where her great-great-grandmother worked, years before child labour was outlawed. Aged just 13, her grandmother worked in a factory, and the factory still stands. Just about. She learns more about Jessie and her life in Victorian Aberdeen, and how girls as young as 10 would work full-time for 60 hours a week for very little money with complex and dangerous machines.
This is not census, but this is a death certificate. Jessie's death certificate.
At 24, Jessie had gotten married, but the situation took a turn. At just 35, Jessie passed away from cancer. Lennox tried to look on the bright side though, saying that it was good that now her family knew who Jessie was, and a little about her life.
Carcinoma, would that be?
Ulcerous.
Ulcerous carcinoma. And she was 35, she was just 35. Oh.
Number 3, a child given away.
Your mother was with this family only for 1 month, for a very, very short period of time.
Pop star Lulu wanted to know why her mother had been given up for adoption, so she went to Glasgow to look at the records from social services. Lulu's mother Elizabeth was the only one of many siblings who went to live elsewhere, and she learned that it was because her parents were unfit.
I have to say I'm feeling very angry with my grandparents. Willy-nilly having babies all over the place.
The family who took her in were much better, looking after her, sending her to school, and raising her in a happy home.
Child went to school yesterday for the first time and is very pleased with herself.
But the really heartbreaking moment is when Lulu talks about her aunts and uncles who didn't get to leave the family, and always talked about how lucky Elizabeth was to have grown up elsewhere.
In a lot of respects, your mother has been a very, very fortunate child.
Yes, and that's what my uncle James said. She was lucky.
Number 2, a tragic death.
Mrs. Stimpson, on learning that her husband was dead, was seized with violent hysterics, which were repeated throughout the evening.
Star of The Crown, Claire Foy, wanted to learn what happened to her great-great-grandfather and uncovered a brutal tragedy. A group of men tried to cross a river during a race, but many of them didn't make it, unaware of how dangerous the river really was.
If the bodies had not been swept down to the sea, a pool about 160 yards below the breakwater in front of the church would be a very likely place for one or more of them to lie.
She followed directions in old newspaper articles and found the place that the body of her great-great-grandfather, Henry Stimpson, who drowned in the river, was ultimately found.
It proved to be the jersey of one of the missing men, and the body, on being set loose from the sticks in which it had been entangled, rose to the surface.
Thinking about it more, she wondered whether, had somebody been able to walk further down, they might have seen him there and saved his life.
By the clothing and the red jersey and knickerbockers, it was identified as Private Stimpson, one of the 2 married men who drowned.
Number 1. Jewish ancestors.
Place of death, Auschwitz camp. So that's my grandfather's sister, my mother's aunt.
In one older edition of Who Do You Think You Are, Stephen Fry examined his Jewish roots, but a hideous tragedy soon emerged. Many of his ancestors were traced back to Auschwitz, where they had been sent by the Nazis during the war.
A-L-I-Z-A, so that's the other girl. That's Eliza. Date of death 44, Auschwitz camp.
His grandparents survived persecution by the Nazis because they were already in Britain by 1927, but his great-grandparents, aunt, and many cousins died in Nazi ghettos and concentration camps.
It's so stupid because I knew this. We all knew that they'd died. At least believed it.
Until going on the show, none of his family knew what had really happened, though they'd always suspected the worst. Let us know which celebrity you want to see on Who Do You Think You Are?
But, you know, we'll take it forward, which is just really beautiful. It hasn't been lost, and that's really a lovely thing.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.